This episode brought to you by Stamps.com. Why go to the store to get stamps when you can have them printed right at home for your convenience? Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. Remember it so you don't have to. It's been an amazing year for movies, hasn't it? What with that movie you thought was okay, with that movie you forgot came out, with that movie that didn't need to exist but you saw because of nostalgia, the other one, even I forgot now. And of course that bountiful category you label as, it wasn't that bad. Yes, it's no mystery that with few exceptions, this year has been pretty underwhelming in terms of big, innovative films. Even the good ones seem to give you what they promised, but not really much more. There were few movies that took you anywhere surprising, whether it be visually or emotionally. It all just felt way too on autopilot. You'd see a film, maybe it'd stay with you for a day or two if you're lucky, and then it'd just blend in with all the other movies that gave you an escape for a bit, but you probably won't think back on very much. That's why when a film not only stood out, but stood out on so many levels, I feel it's worth looking over some of the unique ideas it presented. And I think we all know what film I'm talking about. Though that is criminally underrated. No, I'm not. It's weirdly good. I'm talking about Joker. Shattering all sorts of box office records and, for lack of a better sentence, getting people talking, Joker has fascinated audiences the most with its dark and disturbing look at a comic book character since the last dark and disturbing look at a comic book character. Yeah, in some respects, it's kind of surprising this film stands out as much as it does, seeing how it's taken from so many familiar styles. Many say it's a mix between Batman and Scorsese's films, particularly Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. And yes, I too just accept this is Rupert Pupkin. It just is. I don't even care if you don't know who that is. Now you have an awesome movie to check out. Go see it! Getting sidetracked. Both of these are underrated! What I'm getting to is for something so familiar, it still seems to offer something very new. Combining this late 70s, early 80s gritty style with a well-known comic book character opened up a lot of interpretations. Much like Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, and yeah, even some versions of Batman. It's left open as to what's real and what isn't. Which means I have to put this up. Don't worry, I won't reveal that he's Kaiser Soze. Assuming you've seen the film, you're aware that Joker, or Arthur, is the victim of his own mental health. He has a condition where he laughs uncontrollably when he's nervous, has trouble keeping his aggressive impulses in check, and fantasizes different realities, such as him and his neighbor Sophie being madly in love. What's funny is at first I was really annoyed that the relationship between those two seemed so unfocused. Then I enjoyed it when I discovered it's supposed to be in focus because he himself can't always focus on it. He's making it up. But then I got annoyed again because I saw it as kinda pointless. If you cut her out of the story, what do you miss? It almost seemed like a weak way to fool the audience just for the sake of fooling the audience. But then it won me back again. I can't even think of the last film that had me ping-pong back and forth so much. Because as the Joker has said in many different versions, his reality is multiple choice, always remembering things differently. This sets up that everything you see is not necessarily what's really happening. Which got me to consider a surreal but still very plausible possibility. What if Batman is just in his head? That may sound like a leap, but given everything we know about him and even don't know about him, this might actually hold more water than you might think. We've established he knows who both Bruce and Thomas Wayne are, and he may or may not have a blood connection with them. The ending of the film shows him hailed as a hero with Bruce's parents being murdered by a killer who was inspired by his actions. Thinking back to the murder, Joker says he finds it funny, but nobody would get why. I always took this as he was one of the weak and helpless getting shit on by the rich and powerful. But through his actions, he may have become the biggest villain to the weak and helpless, while simultaneously a member of the rich and powerful will become their biggest hero, which the Joker's actions helped create. A boatload of irony to say the least, and like he said, a little funny. Like I mentioned before though, we're not entirely sure what happened in this ending and what didn't happen. But either argument works for Batman being in his head. Because if the murders didn't happen, he just made it up to make his delusion even grander. But if it did happen, it'll obviously get back to him and he could work it into his fantasy. So with that literally in mind, doesn't it make sense that he would construct a reality where he's this grand, important character that's both the greatest loser and the greatest winner? A genius in his mind, but a madman to everyone else? Not even knowing if he's laughing out of fear or joy anymore? Wouldn't it add up that he has himself playing a big part in one way or another, shaping, constructing, and constantly challenging the ultimate force of good? He's the fallen angel, the tempter that always tries to test the ultimate good to see if such a thing can exist. Someone everybody wrote off as a mistake, but is actually one of the most important elements in keeping balance. In a way, it's the ultimate revenge and the ultimate cry for attention. Everybody just ignored him, but now he becomes the ultimate feared figure that everybody acknowledges we should have paid attention to. We should have acknowledged how grand he is. Thus, he constructs a reality in his mind where he is that grand and important. Because without him, there wouldn't be that ultimate symbol of good fighting evil. He's the greater evil that's always testing the greater good.
The greater good.
Kind of like testing how to find a segue for a sponsorship in an editorial video. Actually, that works. So many stories have been written comparing the opposites and the similarities between Batman and the Joker. In The Killing Joke, he implies all it takes is one bad day to create both of them, even though they have very different paths. In the Arkham Asylum games, the idea of Joker and Batman being the same person is dabbled with several times. With all these different interpretations, why can't one of the interpretations be Batman is all in his head? Wouldn't that explain all the different styles, different moods, different outcomes? While the rest of the world is doing their best to get by, he could be rotting away in a cell having the grandest battle of ethics with someone that is both so different yet so alike. Much like how he danced back and forth between being moral and immoral, good and bad, sane and insane, he could be having the same dance in his mind with another poetic outcast often seen as a madman. I mean, how convenient is it that these two arch-nemeses may have had the exact same father? Come from opposite upbringings, both dress very theatrically, one loud and colorful, the other quiet and dark, and seem like different ends of the same coin. Creating Batman could be Arthur's way of finally belonging somewhere. Creating the perfect reality where his madness has a purpose, and that's to create purpose for the greatest fighter of the helpless the world has ever known. It sounds, well, like a comic book, which I think is safe to say exists in the film world that the Joker takes place in. He has created his comic book universe of good versus evil, and because he can never fully accept himself as good, he can at least be an important kind of evil, the greatest kind of evil as many will call him, at least in the world he's created in his mind. See, this is what the movie has done. It's created a reality that's so rich, yet so open, you can read a great deal into it. The world of, say, The Dark Knight, or Batman the Animated Series, or especially Batman and Robin, can't really exist in the style and timeline given here. But it can in the fabricated reality of our lead, which they clearly establish he does make up. What makes this film so genius is technically every version of Batman can be canon if you accept it's all in his mind. Maybe he's in a more playful mood, so he'll see himself as Cesar Romero. Maybe he's in a more cryptic mood, so he'll see himself as Heath Ledger. Maybe he got really drunk and saw himself as Jared Leto. Whatever version there is, it can exist in his mind. Even the adventures of Batman that don't involve him, he can imagine that too. Yeah, he has a torn girlfriend who dresses like a cat. There's a gangster with half his face burnt off and a split personality. There's a Birdman who's sometimes sophisticated, sometimes an animal. If you think about it, most of these characters have a duality that makes up a good chunk of their identity, just like his duality makes up a good chunk of his. Even the Joker film given to us, for all we know, could be another altered reality. Maybe this is all a delusion in the mind of another Joker. Again, figuring out, are you the dream or the dreamer? So this can work in a lot of ways, and chances are we'll never know the full truth. There's been talk from a lot of fans that they love to see different origin movies in different styles for just the Joker alone. Because most people never want to know the exact truth. It should be left a little vague on what's real and what isn't, because one of the absolutes with the character is that he has to, in one way or another, be crazy. Intelligent, but still crazy. Is he crazy because he's so brilliant and ahead of the curve? Or is he crazy because he's too weak to accept the reality that's given to him? That can be left open to the viewer, but the element that makes him do the things that he does is some mental abnormality. Because of this, the sky's the limit as to what's going on and what isn't going on. Meaning Batman, his battles, and all the people he comes across could totally be fabricated, kept alive by the Joker's need to have a warped reason to exist. Now here's the thing, is this what the filmmakers had in mind when they made this? I have no idea. Probably not. But the fact remains that they made a film so good that it can technically encompass all future and previous versions. The timelines can be altered because his reality can be altered. And with such a huge backlog of stories and incarnations, it can be left open to what's really happening and what isn't. Do I want an answer to what's real and what isn't in the world of the Joker? Absolutely not. The way reality is subjective to him, the same way reality should be subjective to us, picking and choosing what we believe the real truth is. I guess you can technically draw this conclusion with any of the incarnations of the Joker as, again, the one factor to all of them is that he's a crazy clown. He could imagine Batman in any of these versions and he's just nuts in an insane asylum. But this one, from what I've seen, seems to be the most realistic, which means that it's the most probable that that's what's going on. Because it does take place in a more real, grim, harsher reality that has less, well, superheroes in it. It's one of those interpretations that strays so far in some respects to what the original character was supposed to be like, crazy villain of the week, but has rode the layers of development that have been given to him over the years, creating one of the most definitive versions, in that every version can exist in him. It's kind of like those movies or shows where they tie in all the previous versions of a character or a franchise in one. Except this doesn't exist via parallel universes or in-jokes, it's done through psychological means, which, with this character, is the most fitting and interesting way to go about it. I think that's one of the reasons the Joker is seen as one of the great long-lasting characters. The best stuff with him is mental, timeless, challenging, and constantly having us question the world around us. Just when you think the best version of a great character exists, somebody comes along and gives their own unique spin that's somehow both incredibly different but incredibly faithful at the same time. This is the first movie in a while where I've thought this hard about a character's reality and the different outcomes that could be generated from it. It makes me realize how much more life can continue to grow in a great work of art even after you've already experienced it. I mean, this started out as a comic book superhero, just someone trying to go, stop crime, dress up in a costume like a lot of superheroes. But through so many great writers and artists, it's morphed into something else, something grand, something important. Yeah, he may have just started off as a villain a superhero was supposed to fight, hopefully maybe get another issue, but he's become something so much more. He's become different things to different people, changing many elements over the years, but keeping many other elements the same. All of them carrying something we recognize as important. And that's what any great work of art should do, whether it's written or visual or whatever, it's supposed to evolve and have you constantly looking at life in a different way. Where most movies I find either little problems or big problems the more I think about it, this one I find new possibilities and new stories stitched into what I already thought was a great story. I know a lot of films this year may come and go, but Joker is gonna stay with me for a while. And I'm excited to see what new avenues I'll discover the next time I give it a watch. Like maybe one day I'll understand why the dancing went on too long. I still don't get that. I'm the nostalgia critic guy, remember? So you don't have to.